He was abandoned as a child. A billionaire gave him a home, and 27 years later, his parents returned. What happened next will leave you speechless. Jonathan Blake, a self-made billionaire known for his tech empire, was attending a charity gala in downtown Atlanta. Outside the event, he noticed a small boy wandering alone near a busy intersection. The child seemed lost, flinching at every loud noise, mumbling to himself. Jonathan's intuition told him something was wrong. He approached cautiously. "Hey there, are you okay?" The boy looked up, eyes wide, frightened. His name was Elijah. When Jonathan learned that no one claimed the child and that he was abandoned, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Despite the protests of social workers who warned him about the challenges of raising a special needs child, Jonathan insisted on adopting him. "He deserves a family," he said firmly. Raising Elijah was a journey unlike anything Jonathan had ever imagined, a path strewn with both challenges that tested every ounce of his patience and moments of unexpected, quiet joy that reshaped his understanding of love and family. From the very beginning, it was clear that Elijah was not like other children. His world was intensely vivid, yet painfully fragile. The first months of his life were filled with cries that Jonathan could not soothe, and sounds, even as simple as a vacuum cleaner or a door slamming, could send Elijah into a panic that left him shaking, overwhelmed, and utterly inconsolable. Jonathan's household, which had always been a whirlwind of activity, filled with music, television, servants bustling about, social gatherings, and constant chatter, had to be reimagined almost entirely. The noise that he once took for granted, that had once seemed like the heartbeat of his home, had to be softened, regulated, and sometimes eliminated entirely to create a sanctuary where Elijah could feel safe enough to explore the world in his own way. Jonathan quickly realized that raising a child like Elijah was not about control or expectation. It was about adaptation, observation, and learning to meet him on his terms rather than insisting that he meet the world. He hired specialists, pediatric therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists, filling his home with dedicated staff who were trained in the nuanced needs of autistic children. Yet even the most skilled professionals could only do so much. The true lessons came to Jonathan in the quiet, private moments when he was alone with Elijah, observing the small gestures that spoke volumes. He learned to watch the tilt of Elijah's head, the flicker of his eyes, the way his fingers tapped against a table, and to respond with patience, validation, and love rather than frustration or impatience. The progress was agonizingly slow at first. Elijah remained nonverbal for months, sometimes years, and his responses to touch were hypersensitive, making even a simple hug or handhold a careful negotiation rather than a spontaneous expression of affection. Bath time, dressing, and feeding, tasks Jonathan had once taken for granted with his other children, became exercises in mindfulness and empathy, requiring him to regulate not just the environment but his own reactions, tone of voice, and energy. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Elijah began to open doors to communication. At first, it was through gestures, pointing to objects he wanted, reaching for a favorite toy, or shaking his head in frustration. Then came drawings, crude but expressive, which Jonathan treasured as glimpses into the rich inner world of his son. Each drawing, each gesture was a triumph, a moment of connection that made the countless days of struggle seem worthwhile. And then, over time, came words, small, deliberate, cautious words that were like treasures heaped upon his heart. Jonathan remembered the first time Elijah said water, unprompted, the way his eyes sparkled with pride and tentative curiosity. The breakthrough was not sudden but cumulative, a mosaic of victories pieced together by patience, consistency, and an unwavering belief in his child's unique brilliance. As Elijah grew, Jonathan's understanding deepened in ways that transcended conventional notions of parenting. He realized that his role was not to reshape Elijah into a version that the world would easily accept, nor to force him into social norms, but to create an environment where his son could thrive as he was. In turn, Elijah taught him lessons about humility, resilience, and the power of silent communication. There were setbacks, of course, days when Elijah retreated entirely, when loud noises, unexpected changes, or social pressures overwhelmed him and left Jonathan grappling with feelings of helplessness and worry. But these days, too, were instructive, teaching Jonathan that progress was not linear, that love often required waiting, listening, and showing presence without expectation. Through these trials, The bond between father and son grew immeasurably strong, defying conventional definitions of family. Jonathan often found himself reflecting on the journey with a mixture of awe and reverence. He did not see Elijah as a problem to be fixed or a project to be completed. He saw him as a teacher, a mirror reflecting both the challenges and the joys of truly unconditional love. In moments of quiet, when Elijah nestled against him with a drawing clutched in his tiny hands or whispered a word he had been practicing for days, Jonathan felt a depth of connection that words could not capture. He understood then that his role was not to rescue Elijah in the traditional sense, but to accompany him, to witness his world, and to learn from it. "I didn't rescue him just to change him," Jonathan often thought, gazing at his son with tears in his eyes. "I wanted to understand him." And in that understanding, in that relentless effort to bridge the gap between two very different experiences of the world, Jonathan discovered the true meaning of fatherhood: patience that never faltered, love that never judged, and a commitment to walk alongside someone entirely on their own terms. As the years passed, Elijah grew in confidence and ability, his personality shining through in ways that left Jonathan in awe. He developed unique interests and talents, small quirks that became the hallmarks of his individuality. Jonathan celebrated every milestone, every word, every smile, understanding that the triumphs lay not just in the achievements themselves, but in the journey of discovery and connection they represented. Their home, once chaotic and unfiltered, had transformed into a sanctuary of gentle rhythms, attuned to Elijah's needs, and in the process, Jonathan himself had been transformed. He had learned patience, humility, the art of listening without demanding words, and the quiet, profound joy of simply being present with someone he loved fiercely. And so, amidst the challenges and the victories, the frustrations and the breakthroughs, father and son built a life together that was extraordinary not for its conformity to societal expectations, but for its depth, authenticity, and love. In Elijah, Jonathan found not only a child to care for, but a mirror reflecting the infinite capacity for empathy, adaptation, and devotion that lay within himself. And in that reflection, he discovered a richness of human connection that would guide both of them for a lifetime. Years passed, and Elijah grew into a remarkable young man, his brilliance and gentleness shining in ways that made everyone who met him pause and take notice. And though his autism remained an intrinsic part of who he was, it was not a limitation, but a lens that amplified his extraordinary abilities and shaped a perspective on life that was at once unique, profound, and deeply inspiring. From an early age, Elijah's mind revealed a precision and creativity that could not be taught. Numbers and patterns seemed to speak to him in ways that transcended ordinary understanding, and his mathematical ability developed into a level of prodigious talent that left even seasoned educators in awe, while his artistic sensibilities manifested in paintings that were at once vivid, delicate, and startlingly perceptive, capturing emotions, landscapes, and abstract concepts with a depth that belied his years and often conveyed truths that words could not encapsulate. Jonathan watched these developments with a mixture of pride, humility, and wonder, fully aware that no amount of wealth or resources could have produced such gifts on their own, and that the real treasure lay in the patience, understanding, and freedom he had worked so hard to provide, ensuring that Elijah had not just material security, but also the encouragement, support, and space to explore his passions and nurture the mind and soul that was so uniquely his own. The home that had once been a place of noise, chaos, and adjustment had gradually transformed into a sanctuary of gentle routines, thoughtful attention, and creative stimulation, a place where Elijah could thrive, experiment, and express himself freely, whether through intricate calculations, experiments with abstract formulas, or long hours spent at an easel, lost in colors, textures, and forms that seemed to emerge from another plane of perception. Friends, teachers, and even strangers who encountered Elijah were consistently struck not only by his talents, but by the quiet wisdom and empathy he radiated. He had a way of seeing people and situations with clarity and compassion, of intuitively understanding emotions, motivations, and needs, and of offering gestures of kindness and support that were both subtle and profound. Jonathan often reflected on the paradox that the son he had once feared might be limited by his condition had become one of the most expansive influences in his life, a source of insight and connection that no money could ever buy, and he marveled at how Elijah's mind and heart had grown in tandem, creating a man whose intelligence was inseparable from his empathy and whose brilliance was inseparable from his humanity. In practical terms, Jonathan spared no effort to ensure that Elijah had access to the finest education, tutors who could challenge his intellect, mentors who could guide his talents, and experiences that would broaden his understanding of the world beyond their home. Yet he never imposed ambition, competition, or expectation, recognizing that the most valuable gift he could offer was the freedom for Elijah to chart his own course, to experiment, to fail, to explore, and to succeed on his own terms, guided by curiosity and passion rather than pressure. Elijah, in turn, repaid this investment not with conventional markers of achievement, but with gifts far more profound. A level of unconditional loyalty, honesty, and love that transcended transactional relationships, a deep empathy that revealed the intricacies of human nature to Jonathan in ways he had never known, and a quiet, reflective presence that acted as a mirror to Jonathan's own heart, illuminating both strengths and weaknesses and fostering growth in a father who had once defined success in terms of wealth, status, and control. Family dinners, once a cacophony of activity and tension, became moments of shared laughter, thoughtful conversation, and gentle observation, where Jonathan could watch his son engage with ideas, debate concepts, or share a painting or mathematical insight, and feel a profound sense of connection that went beyond words, reminding him that the most valuable legacies are not those that can be inherited, but those that transform hearts, perspectives, and relationships. Elijah's life was not without challenges. Social misunderstandings, sensory sensitivities, and moments of anxiety still appeared, but he met each with resilience, guided by the foundation of love, patience, and freedom his father had carefully cultivated, and he developed strategies to navigate the world in ways that highlighted his abilities rather than obscured them, often surprising others with his resourcefulness, creativity, and insight. Jonathan took joy not only in Elijah's accomplishments, but in the way he approached life, with wonder, honesty, and integrity, demonstrating to all who knew him that intelligence and creativity are amplified by compassion and emotional awareness, and that true success is measured not in accolades or material wealth, but in the capacity to enrich the lives of others while remaining true to oneself. Jonathan frequently reflected that in raising Elijah, he had received a gift far greater than anything money could buy, the opportunity to witness a human being grow into his fullest potential, unshaped by societal expectations, and to be guided himself into deeper understanding, empathy, and patience. He realized that wealth, influence, and privilege were empty if not paired with love, guidance, and the ability to nurture talent and character with sensitivity and respect. In Elijah, Jonathan discovered not only a son but a teacher, a companion, and a mirror reflecting the best and sometimes overlooked aspects of his own humanity, revealing the profound truth that the greatest gifts in life are not those that can be measured or held, but those that transform hearts, create bonds that withstand the trials of life, and illuminate the enduring power of love, understanding, and acceptance. The bond between them, forged through years of care, adaptation, and shared growth, had become unbreakable, a silent testament to the value of patience, the necessity of empathy, and the immeasurable worth of allowing someone to flourish in their own unique way. And Jonathan often found himself in quiet moments marveling at how a life once fraught with anxiety, uncertainty, and constant adjustment had blossomed into a narrative of extraordinary achievement, unconditional love, and a gift beyond wealth. Power or influence, one that could never be quantified but would last a lifetime, a legacy written not in money or titles, but in the enduring connection between father and son, the mutual respect and understanding, and the shared recognition that what they had built together transcended material measures, and touched the very essence of what it means to be human, compassionate, and alive. On Elijah's 27th birthday, a day that had been planned as a quiet celebration with family and close friends, a letter arrived at Jonathan's sprawling estate, elegantly sealed, yet carrying a weight that none of the envelopes that came daily could ever hold. The handwriting was unfamiliar, trembling with age, and the words inside were even more startling. They claimed to be Elijah's biological parents, two elderly individuals who explained that decades ago, circumstances beyond their control, compounded by crushing poverty and the harsh realities of life, had forced them to give up their infant son, believing they were securing a future for him they could never provide. And now, after so many years, they wished to reconnect, to see the man he had become. And perhaps to ask for forgiveness for a decision that had haunted them quietly for all these years. Jonathan, upon reading the letter, felt a mixture of skepticism, caution, and curiosity. The handwriting could be genuine, yet so many questions arose immediately. Why now, after 27 years, had they chosen this particular moment to reach out, and could their intentions be trusted? He pondered whether the request was driven by remorse, a desire to genuinely know the son they had lost, or something less sincere, and after careful deliberation, he decided to agree to a meeting under controlled circumstances, knowing that honesty, transparency, and preparation would be essential for both Elijah's emotional safety and the integrity of the encounter. Elijah himself, upon being told of the letter, experienced a maelstrom of emotions that were simultaneously familiar and alien. A part of him, nurtured for 27 years by Jonathan's unwavering love and understanding, was curious and even sympathetic, while another part felt a sting of betrayal, a shadow of abandonment that even time could not completely erase, and he wrestled privately with questions of identity, loyalty, and forgiveness. Could he accept these strangers as parents, even if biologically they were, and could he reconcile the years of absence with the reality of his present life, which had been filled with love, stability, and the unwavering devotion of the father who had chosen him when the world had turned away? The days leading up to the meeting were tense and reflective. Elijah spent hours wandering through his private studio, gazing at paintings he had made over the years, each one a reflection of his growth, perception, and inner life, and he wondered whether the people who had given him up could truly understand the person he had become, or if they could only see fragments of the son they had lost, ignorant of the experiences, struggles, and triumphs that had shaped him into a man who, despite past hardships, carried himself with a calm maturity, empathy, and grace. When the day of the meeting arrived, Jonathan carefully orchestrated the environment, choosing a neutral, quiet space in the estate where conversation could flow without intrusion or distraction. And when the elderly couple arrived, the first impression was a mixture of fragility and dignity. Their eyes, clouded by age, yet bright with the intensity of long-suppressed emotion, met Elijah's cautiously observant gaze, and the room was immediately charged with the weight of decades, of questions unanswered, of loss, longing, and the tentative hope for reconciliation. Tears came quickly from the couple, trembling hands clutching each other as they attempted to articulate feelings that had been bottled up for a lifetime, their voices breaking as they explained the desperate circumstances that had led to their heart-wrenching decision to part with their child, the poverty that had stripped them of options, and the silent remorse that had never left them, leaving an ache that time could not heal, but that now sought resolution, even if tentative and uncertain. Elijah listened attentively, his posture composed, his hands folded calmly, yet inside he was navigating an intricate labyrinth of thought and emotion. The acknowledgement of their hardship, the recognition of the choices that had been forced upon them, the understanding that life had not offered them an easy path, all mingled with the residual hurt and abandonment that no explanation could entirely erase. And yet, even as he felt the sting of old wounds, he also sensed the raw sincerity in their words, the genuine longing to connect, and the courage it had taken to reach out after so many years. Jonathan, standing silently beside Elijah, felt a surge of pride and humility, recognizing in his son not just the brilliance and creativity that had always amazed him, but the extraordinary capacity for composure, empathy, and measured response, qualities that had been nurtured not through wealth or privilege alone, but through years of unconditional love, patience, and understanding. And he realized that in that very moment, Elijah was the embodiment of resilience, grace, and humanity. Confronting a difficult past with clarity, strength, and self-possession that few could match. The conversation continued, unfolding gradually, like layers of a long-forgotten story being carefully peeled back. The couple asked questions about Elijah's life, his passions, his achievements, while Elijah responded with honesty, sharing details of his art, his mathematical work, and the profound relationship he had built with Jonathan, highlighting the love and guidance that had been constant. And yet, through each exchange, he maintained an inner equilibrium, neither dismissive nor entirely forgiving, allowing himself to feel without being overwhelmed, to process without losing composure, and to offer gestures of acknowledgement without compromising his own sense of self or security. Tears were shed, soft and unobtrusive, not in a display of weakness, but as a natural release of emotion that reflected the depth of human experience, the mingling of loss and reunion, of regret and understanding, of years apart that had created both distance and longing. And as the meeting progressed, the tone shifted gradually from tentative awkwardness to cautious warmth, as all parties began to sense the possibility of connection, however complex and imperfect. And the fragile hope that even after decades of separation, something meaningful could be forged from honesty, empathy, and openness. Elijah, throughout the encounter, displayed a remarkable calm, the result of a lifetime of being deeply loved, nurtured, and guided by Jonathan. His voice was measured, his responses thoughtful, and his demeanor conveyed an inner peace that contrasted with the turbulence of emotion in the elderly couple, a peace born not from absence of feeling, but from the strength of character cultivated through love, patience, and the security of knowing he had always been chosen, valued, and understood. And in that serenity, Jonathan saw the culmination of all their years together. The living proof that true fatherhood is not defined solely by biology, but by presence, dedication, and unwavering love. By the end of the meeting, there were no sweeping resolutions, no miraculous erasure of the past, but there was acknowledgement, shared understanding, and the delicate beginnings of connection. The couple expressed gratitude for the opportunity to see their son as he had grown. Elijah acknowledged their words with composed dignity, and Jonathan silently celebrated the balance his son had achieved between empathy, grace, and self-respect. In the quiet aftermath, as the elderly couple departed with promises to remain in contact, Elijah turned to Jonathan with a faint but genuine smile, a small gesture that conveyed volumes. Gratitude, composure, and an awareness that while the past could not be changed, the present could be embraced with clarity and kindness, and that the love which had sustained him through every challenge, every fear, and every uncertainty had been true, unwavering, and life-defining, shaping him into a man capable of facing the complexities of reunion and forgiveness without losing the core of who he was. Jonathan, reflecting on the encounter, felt a profound sense of awe and fulfillment. He had witnessed not only the courage of the couple who had made a painful choice decades earlier, but also the extraordinary maturity and humanity of the son he had raised with devotion. The son whose calm presence, empathy, and strength had turned what could have been a moment of tension into an experience of connection, understanding, and hope. And he understood more clearly than ever that love, commitment, and choice are the true measures of parenthood, capable of shaping resilience, character, and the capacity to navigate life's most unexpected and emotional turns. Elijah listened to his biological parents' story. They had struggled with addiction and extreme hardship when he was a baby. They had thought he'd have a better chance elsewhere. Instead of anger, Elijah offered understanding. "I am grateful for the life I've been given," he said. "I am who I am because of the love I received, but I will meet you as the son I've become, not the baby you lost." Jonathan watched, proud and emotional, realizing that Elijah had grown into a man capable of empathy that many never achieve in a lifetime. Elijah's life became a symbol of hope. He became an advocate for autistic individuals, opening a foundation that provided therapy, education, and safe homes for abandoned children with disabilities. Jonathan continued to support him, not just financially, but as a father and best friend. Together, they showed the world that love isn't defined by blood, wealth, or circumstance. It's defined by choice, patience, and commitment. And when Elijah's biological parents volunteered at his foundation, they did so humbly, guided by the son they had lost but now admired. The story ended not with resentment or regret, but with the quiet power of unconditional love, a billionaire, a boy once abandoned, and a family redefined by compassion.